Today, we're going to be using an iceberg chart to describe some of the most horrendous scandals that have taken place since the release of Counter-Strike. Iceberg! For those of you that are unfamiliar with how these charts work, at the very top will be events that took place that most people will probably know about. But as we move closer to the bottom, we'll start to discover some of the worst things people have ever done with this game. Jesus Christ! Regardless of how long you've been a part of the Counter-Strike community, I promise that I'll show you something that you've never seen before.
This is something else.
And even if you do know about most of these scandals, I'll also provide you with details that you may not have known. Before we get started, I also want to mention that all of my sources are listed in the description of the video. So if you'd like to fact check me or just want to do some of your own research, I highly encourage it. Enjoy. Oh, and one more thing.
SkinsMonkey. SkinsMonkey is a fully automated CS2 trading site. SkinsMonkey provides an instant way to get new skins. Along with that, they have a 24/7 live chat support, so if you run into any problems, they'll be right there to help you. If you're interested in finding a specific skin, you can use their search tool. Better yet, if you're not sure what skin you're looking for, you can use their filter tool to find exactly what you're looking for. If you use my promo code RIDEORDIE, you can earn up to $5 for free. Trade up $100 to make the most of it. Now, if you don't want to trade your skins but you'd rather buy, SkinsMonkey is now offering a 30% deposit bonus. And if you use my promo code RIDEORDIE, you'll receive an additional 5%. Remember, use code RIDEORDIE to get up to $5 for free and claim your 35% deposit bonus. Thank you SkinsMonkey for sponsoring this video.
During the early days of CSGO, North America had what most people consider two teams that were capable of competing on a world stage. One of those teams was IbyPower. The team consisted of Steel, Skadoodle, Dazed, Swag, and AZK. On the 20th of August 2014, during CEVO's professional Season 5 tournament, a match including the team iBUYPOWER, who already qualified for playoffs, and Netcode Guides, which needed one more win to qualify, was being streamed live on Twitch. As the match was being played, commentators couldn't ignore just how poorly iBUYPOWER was playing.
And not even rust, maybe it's just jet lag. I don't know, but yeah, they are not performing how they should be, obviously.
This came as a surprise to anyone who watched the match too, and that was partly due to the fact that iBUYPOWER was an overwhelming favorite to win the match. In fact, it was thought of at the time that the only team who could really compete with iBUYPOWER was Cloud9. Both of these teams had already proven themselves on the international level by competing with some of the best teams in the world, which is no doubt a significant feat considering the talent discrepancy between EU and NA. Regardless, by the end of the match, iBUYPOWER had lost, and not by a close margin either. The game ended 16-4. The community was confused, but like most upsets, people quickly forgot about the matter and enjoyed watching the rest of the tournament. But the forgetfulness wouldn't last very long. The very next day, professional CS player Shazam would reveal to journalist Richard Lewis that the match was fixed. Shazam would not, however, explain who is behind the match fixing. Because of this, there was a reasonable level of doubt and the claim was not taken seriously. But then a few months later, text messages between an ex-girlfriend of another professional player named Derek DeBorn were posted on an ESEA forum. DeBorn would say a lot in these messages, but most notably, and I quote, "They really did throw that match, and I bet for them on alternate accounts." After the community got a hold of these screenshots, they quickly surfaced on Reddit, but the overwhelming conclusion was that these messages were fake. But soon after, Ashley LaBouffe, the ex-girlfriend, contacted the Daily Dot, an esports news outlet, where she would confirm the authenticity of these messages. As a result of all this, an investigation would begin and several players would receive lifetime bans from Valve-sponsored events. These players would include Brax, AZK, Steel, Dazed, Cud, and DeBorn. Skadoodle never received a ban due to him not receiving any compensation for the throw, unlike his teammates. But along with these people was someone named Casey Foster, who was also a co-founder of Netcode Guides. And Foster's business partner in this joint venture was Dazed, who was on the active roster of iBUYPOWER. What few people know now, though, is that Casey Foster, the person who some speculate orchestrated the match fixing, is now the co-founder of a site called Refrag. Personally, I believe a lifetime ban for these players is quite unnecessary, and like Richard Lewis said, it's a brutally disproportionate punishment. And honestly, I couldn't agree more. These players, in my opinion, were made an example of, and this wouldn't be the last time match fixing would take place in professional Counter-Strike. But on the bright side, Steel shared with the community that he would officially be allowed to return to Valve-sponsored events after 26 January 2025. Other members a part of the match fixing haven't spoken up about their bans being lifted, but Steel speculates that other players could have received similar communication. Regardless though, this left NA Counter-Strike at an even worse disadvantage. When at the time we had two teams that could compete on a world stage, now we only had one. But as luck would have it, the only player that didn't receive a lifetime ban on iBUYPOWER, Skadoodle, would later win NA's only major victory on Cloud9, which also featured a guy named Tarek, who, guess what, was also on the active roster for netcode guides during the match fixing scandal. Crazy. Back in 2018, Optic wanted to expand their organization to other countries. So that same year on the 1st of May, Optic decided to host tryouts for an Indian-based team. After a lengthy and thorough tryout process, they finally settled on their official roster, which consisted of Antidote, Hyvan, Marzil, Forsaken, and YB. Quickly after forming, the team experienced some much needed success by taking first place in ESL's India Premiership Series and would ultimately qualify for Zowie Asia Extreme LAN 2018. This would be their first ever LAN event. Unfortunately, Optic India's first match in the Zowie tournament was a loss to Frostfire. Then following this match, they were set off to face a Vietnamese team called Revolution. During the match, there were numerous clips recorded of the player Forsaken where he seems to have inhuman-like reactions and even tracking people through walls. There is nothing more incriminating than on round 8 against Revolution. As you can see, he clearly tracks the T that jumps behind the wall. And then during round 12, you can see Forsaken kill an enemy and then immediately, just for a brief moment, flick to a T that is clearly not in his vision. Tournament organizers became increasingly suspicious of his gameplay and decided to take a technical timeout to ensure that there was nothing unsportsmanlike happening.
Yeah, it is what it is. They've actually had to call a tactical pause, but I'm sure that'll be getting sorted out in a moment.
Once round 19 was over, they initiated a technical pause and began investigating. When they approached Forsaken and his computer, they required him to alt-tab his Counter-Strike so they could see that there was nothing running on his computer. But once this happens and the tournament admin starts navigating Forsaken's PC, he tries to swat his hand away and starts trying to delete any evidence of cheating. After an hour-long tech pause, tournament admins were able to find deleted files and discovered a cheating software that gave Forsaken what appeared to be his soft aim lock and walls. The reason why this is named Word.exe is because Forsaken actually named his cheating executable file Word.exe. I'm not entirely sure what was going on in Forsaken's head, but cheating in any capacity is an awful act. And to bring it into a LAN setting in a controlled environment is pure insanity. Regardless of what he was thinking, tournament officials terminated the match and declared Revolution the winner, rightfully so. It was later announced by ESL that they began investigating Optic India's win at the earlier mentioned ESL event, and that was the event they took first place in. It was discovered by ESL admins that Forsaken was in fact cheating at this event too. As a result, Optic India's first place win at ESL India Premiership was overturned and they gave the second and third place finishers a chance at first place via a rematch. What's even more hilarious is that during this rematch, a player named the Guru was caught cheating. So all in all, the initial winner of ESL India Premiership was caught cheating, and in an effort to revert this, the next winning team was also convicted of cheating. The CS Pro scene in India has never really fully recovered from this, which is honestly really unfortunate. It's unlucky that an entire region of players is held back by the stigma that a few bad apples created. Earlier this year during IEM Dallas, there were reports of someone stealing SSDs from what was thought at the time to be a controlled area in the Dallas Event Center. 20-year-old Adam Zanzul was detained by local authorities in Dallas for the theft of several SSDs. Zanzul, or otherwise known as MBG12, has an interesting history associated with Counter-Strike. Even though he isn't old enough to drink in his home country, he's already been banned once before on the FACEIT platform and banned from the FACEIT Pro League for attempted match fixing. But in the early months of 2024, prior to IEM Dallas, FACEIT had a change in policy which, as a result, lifted the lifetime ban of Zanzul's account. Because of this, Zanzul began playing competitively again. He even served as a stand-in for Elevate at the PGL Copenhagen Major. But after the major was finished and IEM Dallas was underway, he decided he wanted to attend the event with a few friends. Unfortunately, Zanzul arrived at Dallas too early and his friends hadn't arrived yet, nor was his hotel room ready. Because of this, Zanzul spent time in the hotel lobby in a Discord call with his friends. This hotel he was staying at was literally connected to the event center that IEM Dallas was being hosted at. So at approximately 4 a.m., Zanzul decides to walk over to the event center and was unfortunately allowed in by an employee who was under the impression he was a player and needed access into the building. At the time, Zanzul walks into a controlled area where the players' SSDs are being stored. The reason why events like this keep SSDs on hand is for the purpose of saving players' settings and hot swapping them between matches to reduce downtime. But once he gained access to the room, he decided to take 3 SSDs, Stewie 2Ks, Nikos, and Nerds. Shortly after this, Zanzul was detained by local authorities, which he describes as Kojimo, who spoke with him live on stream in a Discord call.
Took Stewie's, Nikos, and Nerds. Okay, wait. You took them. Wait. You took them.
Yeah,
Where did you take them? Like, what was the idea?
No, I just kept them. Like,
Oh, you still have them?
No. There's so much, dude. The police fucking came to me. There's a lot that happened.
So when did you become aware that they knew that you did that, or did they just like come up on you and surprise you?
Yeah, they jump scared me.
Really? Where did they get you? What the heck?
The venue. I'll go into that, but I gotta.
Okay.
I gotta finish this little. But they also thought I like took other stuff, which I just didn't. They like ended up just finding it later on. Ended up actually telling me that I would have like charges pressed against me, but then like the officers like talked to them, and they did manage to like bring it down. So like I don't have like any charges. I'm not banned from like any events.
As described, Zanzel did not receive criminal charges for theft, but was rather banned for life from all their events and also received a permanent ban on the Faceit platform. When asked about why he decided to steal from the event, he claimed that he was under the influence of marijuana. I'm no expert, but from what I've heard, weed doesn't make you a kleptomaniac. While I was researching this, I wasn't too sure if I wanted to include it in the video, but while I was scouring the internet for details on the matter, I stumbled across this Twitter post. I won't go into too much detail on what the post is about, because there's no real evidence supporting any of these claims. But it goes on to say that MBG12 and several other players associated with him and numerous other North American organizations are involved in illegal activities. This would serve as a better explanation to why Zanzel stole the drives from Dallas, but again, this post is made from a burner account and provides no real evidence to support anything that's said. For now, we can just assume that Zanzel turns into a kleptomaniac when he smokes pot. On the 12th of June 2016, Mohammed Assad, which most people know as Mo, tweeted saying, and I quote, "So I had 26K in diamonds on that site and tried to withdraw, and they telling me I can't. At CSGO Diamonds, you have 24 hours before exposed." Contrary to what it may seem, Mo was not the one being taken advantage of here. Let me explain. At the beginning of 2016, Mo was contacted by developers of a gambling website called CSGO Diamonds. They came to an agreement that if Mo gambled on CSGO Diamonds while streaming, he would receive 20% of the site's revenue for the first month and then 10% of the site's revenue for the months to follow. Now, I know a lot of people have their reservations about CS gambling, and rightfully so. It's very common for these companies to sort of dance around the law. But what they also do is engage in practices that are not just ethically wrong, but morally. And for CSGO Diamonds, that was no different. Along with sponsoring Mo, they also gave him insider information on the future results of these bets that were being placed. All Mo had to do was read a message on Skype, place his bet, and then react as if he didn't know what the outcome was going to be.
But the number has to be below a 10. Dude, it's so high, please don't die. Stay. No! Yes!
And considering he was directly benefiting from his followers depositing money into diamonds, he was essentially stealing from the very same people that support him. But the reason why this became public knowledge was because Mo and Diamonds had a disagreement. Mo was actively working as a broadcaster for E-League, and at the time his streaming obligation to Diamonds was not met. Because of that, Diamonds didn't feel comfortable shelling out 10% of the revenue to someone that was only a part-time liar. So Diamonds and Mo came to an agreement that he would be paid out his share of CSGO Diamonds, and that would be the end of it. By the way, Mo never had any legal equity of the site and was actually owed nothing. Alright, so Mo gets paid $90,000 in what they called a severance pay. All is good, right? No. Mo also wanted his remaining Diamonds balance to become withdrawable so he could cash out even more. After Mo requested this from Diamonds, they obviously said no. Mo became upset and then took matters to Twitter, which is where he tweeted they would have 24 hours to respond. CSGO Diamonds decided to not agree to Mo's new conditions. Mo then decided that the best course of action was to expose Diamonds and himself, which is by far the dumbest thing I've ever heard of. You can imagine the backlash Mo received from this wasn't anything that he expected. I'm not sure what you'd expect when you played an active role in deceiving your audience. And matter of fact, I would go as far as saying that you played more than an active role. He agreed to 1, know the rules, 2, faked a reaction, and then 3, continued to do this for weeks, all to take the money away from his viewers who were presented a disingenuous display in how much money they can earn gambling. While I was doing research on this whole situation, I was honestly disgusted by Mo's actions. There really isn't anything else to add about it, but if you want to learn even more about the situation, I highly recommend you check out the Anti-Gambling Gambling Club's video. Link to that will be in the description. He did a really good job and covered all aspects and goes even further in the detail than I did, so yeah, check it out. This next one I've gone back and forth as to where it should belong in the iceberg. I initially was going to put it towards the top, but since this happened on such a big stage and the lore runs so deep, I decided to move it down the list. Anyway, this is about the people who stormed the stage back in early 2024 at Copenhagen. For those of you that aren't familiar with the situation, there were some people who ran out onto the stage during the Copenhagen Major. It's pretty clear that their intention was to just run onto the stage and cause a scene, and for most people at the time, it was just a weird thing to do. There was a security detail working at the time, and they tackled the idiots who ran on stage, and on their way down from tackling them, the trophy was knocked over, which ended up breaking in front of the entire crowd. It turns out the trophy wasn't made of the ideal material that would prevent it from breaking into two pieces, but I suppose it's just for looks anyway. This whole incident was allegedly orchestrated by an individual named Monarch. Monarch runs a CS gambling website called CSGO Empire. Monarch was displeased with the fact that G2 signed a sponsorship deal with the gambling site CSGO Roll, and to be quite honest, so was the rest of the community. But the emotions that Monarch was feeling were not because an esports organization signed a deal with a shady gambling site and that being unethical. He was upset because it takes traffic away from his own site and in turn, money out of his pockets. So Monarch offers thousands of dollars to anyone at the event to rush the stage and cause a scene. And while that's happening, Monarch is streaming the entire time with background dancers. The whole stream is somewhat off-putting, and the entire time he's mentioning that something major is going to happen, and that didn't really sit well for tournament organizers, and because of this, officials were bolstering security around the stage, which unfortunately didn't help. Immediately following this, CSGO Empire releases a blog post stating that CSGO Roll is ran by a bunch of crooks that scam people. This is somewhat expected from the both of these websites because apparently they've been beefing for a long time and accusing each other of unethical business practices for years. This is like the two guys at work that no one likes getting into an argument in the back. No one wants to hear it, no one cares, and for the love of God, would you stop disrupting my CS2 major? I imagine that CSGO Empire received some legal recourse because of their actions. They tweeted out a statement indicating that they're sorry for the disruption, and for future situations, they'll make their voice heard through other channels. And by other channels, they mean by taking legal routes. Kind of an unsettling clusterfuck if you ask me. In August of 2020, Marush Lord Stabolski reported that there was a bug in CSGO that allowed coaches to see above the map and tell info to other players.
All professional Counter-Strike played in the last 3 years can pretty much be thrown right in the trash. That's my hot take.
ESEA, or the Esports Integrity Commission, claimed that there were 3 variants of the bug, which included a static camera, a free roam camera, and a third-person view camera. At the end of August, just a few days after the bug was discovered, the ESEA banned the head coach of 3 different teams to include the head coach for Heroic. After this news was released, the entire community was in an uproar. This meant that even at the highest level, there were competitive integrity issues. Coaches and teams were literally cheating, but it didn't quite stop there. Just a few days after, ESEA announced that they were not finished with the investigation and there will likely be more bans. They claim that Michael Sawinski, a tournament admin, and Steve Dudenhofer, who is a software development manager at ESEA, were going to examine all the demos recorded of professional play dating all the way back to 2016. ESEA offered coaches that were guilty an opportunity to come forward and admit using the exploit in order to reduce their ban duration. Later in that September, ESEA announced that after reviewing almost 100,000 demos, that they had issued bans to 37 different coaches. Mind you, this is only 20% of the demos. But depending on the severity of the offense, they were giving out bans that could last up to 3 years. ESEA later explained that they were going to finish reviewing all demos before the 2022 major held in Antwerp. After everything was said and done, over 100 coaches received bans. What's interesting about this entire situation is that on the same day that Lord exposed the bug on Twitter, Valve issued a fix that same day. But third-party organizations are the ones that were responsible with holding offenders to this exploit accountable. But what Valve did do is issue a change in the major championship system in January of 2021, and this restricted coaches from being in the same room as their players during online events. Players and coaches, especially ones that didn't use the exploit, were rightfully upset, but this was the only way Valve could ensure competitive integrity of their online matches, I guess. The PhantomLord gambling scandal is like the genesis of all things to come in the future of CS gambling. Similar to Mo's situation, PhantomLord, who was at first a League of Legends streamer, was caught presenting his audience with disingenuous gambling on a website called CSGO Shuffle.
What the fuck was that?
What makes his entire story far worse, however, is the fact that he wasn't working with the site owner. He was the site owner. Well, not exactly. He was a partial owner, but you get the point. But at the time, though, this was not apparent to his audience. And to their knowledge, he was just taking part in what at the time was the dawn of CSGO skins and the gambling craze that followed it. What PhantomLord did was essentially exactly what Mo got caught doing. He was privately messaging this guy named Joris, the founder and software developer of the website, to get roles revealed to him prior to making his bets. Instead of doing this on dice rolls, he would do this in the form of a jackpot. This is a common gambling game that a lot of sites took part in at the time, this kind of winner takes all type of game. Everyone that wants to participate would wager their skins and there would be only one winner. So essentially he would advertise this scam to his entire audience, then as traffic arrived at the site and bets were made, he would steal the winnings. And just to add some perspective to the magnitude of the situation, PhantomLord was the 7th biggest streamer at Twitch on the time. He had over 1.3 million followers and would get anywhere from 20,000 to 50,000 viewers at any one moment. But how PhantomLord got exposed is actually quite funny. There was an anonymous hacker, if you would, that had an idea to see if there were any vulnerabilities with the website CSGO Shuffle. In an effort to do so, he managed to find a way into Joris' Skype account. Again, this is the guy that was the software developer, the founder, all that stuff. That was the guy who PhantomLord worked with. What he found was undeniable evidence of PhantomLord stealing skins from his website's users. So after finding this evidence, the anonymous individual approached an esports journalist named Richard Lewis. He messaged Lewis and sent him all the evidence about the situation, and Lewis did what he does best and started to investigate. Over on Lewis's channel, there was a video posted several years ago revealing PhantomLord's operation to the community. In the video, he also describes how the evidence is undeniable, and he does even more digging to make sure the evidence was proven to be credible. All that to say that once PhantomLord was discovered, he posted an apology video where he didn't even apologize for scamming his audience. He instead mentioned how he is filing a lawsuit with Twitch, who terminated his channel after his unethical actions were found out.
As many of you are already aware, there is an ongoing dispute between myself and Twitch.tv. As a result of this dispute, I am not currently providing content through Twitch.tv.
The lawsuit went through and PhantomLord ended up winning, and the settlement was about $21,000, but the ban was permanent. Since then, PhantomLord has essentially disappeared from YouTube and Twitch. He hasn't posted for years, and he did try for a short while to come back, but the like and dislike ratio on his videos were unprecedented. And the entire comment section was filled with percentage signs, which is exactly what he would message Joris when he needed to scam his audience. During the spring of 2015, Corey Friesen, a former member of Cloud9, openly admitted to Launders that himself and his teammates were using Adderall during ESL 1 Katowice.
I don't even care. We were all on Adderall. Like, I don't even give a fuck. Like, it was pretty obvious. Like, if you listen to the comms, like,
Come.
I don't know. People can hate it or whatever.
Everyone does Adderall at ESEA land, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So
throwing that out there.
This served as a shock to the community. Corey continues to explain in the interview that it did not help him or his teammates perform better. In fact, it did quite the opposite. But even though he mentioned it during the interview, that's not what the community heard. Some of you may remember that Shroud was also a member of Cloud9 at the time, but he's been very consistent with the claim that he never took Adderall during any LAN events. He does, however, admit that he did it once during a demo review.
I think it was Corey that said it. And like it was kind of like true, but it wasn't true in the fact that it was used during tournaments. I took it just to see like what would happen, like if I could actually focus on a fucking demo for once in my life, and it worked. But I've never used it while playing and competing.
You probably have.
In response to Corey's interview, ESEA established a somewhat comprehensive policy regarding doping in esports. I was able to discover an esports integrity policy written by Peter Chegledy, who is the head of the International Association of Gaming Regulators and the co-chair of the firm's esports and gaming group. In the policy, it refers to Corey's interview stating that it was influenced by him and his statement referring to the tournament Cloud9 took part in. It also mentioned the ESEA's anti-doping policy that exclusively bans stimulant substances. Literally nothing else, just uppers alone, that's it. There really isn't much else to cover outside of that story. There are other instances of pros in other esports using substances that they speculate gives them a competitive edge, but there's no real evidence to support the claim that these substances will actually give you an advantage. But from Corey's personal experience, he claims it did the opposite. This next one is where it gets dark. Toriel Julien Barreaux was playing Counter-Strike 1.6 when someone in his game knifed him. I'm sure we've all been there in a match when something embarrassing like this happens, but at worst we rage a little bit, and then depending on the situation we laugh it off. This wasn't the case for Julien. Julien instead spends the next 6 months of his life tracking down the user who knifed him in game. The only information he had on the user was his username, but that didn't stop him. Somehow, after some extensive investigating, Julien was able to identify who this user was and where he lived. He found out the user's real name was Michael, and he lived in Cambria, a commune in the Nord department in northern France. This is only a 2-hour drive for Julien. Once this information was discovered, Julien decided to make his way to Michael's to confront him. Once Julien arrives at Michael's home, he knocks on the door, and when Michael answers, he stabs him. After stabbing Michael in the chest, he then flees the scene, leaving Michael to bleed out from a fatal chest wound. An hour later, Julien was discovered and arrested by local authorities. Michael was left in critical condition and barely survived the stabbing. Medical professionals later reported that the knife was just centimeters away from Michael's heart. After a criminal court proceeding, Julien was only sentenced to 2 years in prison and received court orders to attend anger management classes. The judge also stated that Julien is a menace to society. In my opinion, this kind of behavior deserves a much longer sentencing, but as someone who doesn't have all the fine details of the situation, I'm sure there's a good reason why he wasn't, put away longer. But I suppose the lesson in all this, if you plan on knifing someone in Counter-Strike, I guess make sure your doors are locked, I don't know. In 2013, players who used ESEA as a competitive gaming platform for Counter-Strike started to notice strange behavior from their PCs. They noticed that there was a significant increase in their CPU and GPU usage. Some users reported that their hardware reaching temperatures of over 90 degrees Celsius. This level of usage was nowhere near what they would expect during average gaming session playing Counter-Strike or just literally having their computer turned on. People began to become worried about their computers, and the community's concern was something that ESEA could no longer ignore. This was also because many people were pointing fingers at ESEA, speculating that their hardware usage was a result of some software ESEA had been running. This ended up being true, and ESEA co-owner Eric Thunberg said that they had been testing a Bitcoin mining code that whose only purpose was to serve as an April Fool's joke, but was subsequently activated during a server reset. Then after some skeptical community feedback, Thunberg returned and stated that the employee involved with the testing of the mining code had been using it for his, and I quote, for his own personal gain since April 13, 2013. Thunberg also mentioned that the mining operation had been going on for 2 weeks and over 29 Bitcoins had been mined. At the time, the total value of these coins was about $3,700, and I know this serves as no significance to the story, but today that'd be worth almost $2 million. Once all this came to light, ESEA announced that they were offering a free 1-month-long membership to their premium users, and they would move all the value from the mined Bitcoins to the Season 14 prize pool. But the story doesn't stop there. ESEA was later served with a class action lawsuit where they were fined $1 million. After some court proceedings, the actual settlement came down to $325,000, and the NewJersey.gov released information regarding this case, which states that ESEA took control of approximately 14,000 computers, and once software was deployed, it mined on people's hardware even when they weren't signed into the service or even having the software running. The settlement, which reduced the fine to $325,000, also required ESEA to submit themselves into a 10-year compliance program. And this outlined a bunch of things like how they gathered people's personal data, and they had a list on their website, all that stuff. If you're interested, it's in the description. You can take a look at it if you want to. Anyway, if they were to violate any of the outstanding rules that the government placed on their service, they'd be required to pay the remaining $675,000. This is a small price to pay for the damage that they caused to all the users' PC. I also found no evidence that ESEA actually reimbursed people for their damage or, in some cases, destroyed hardware. They instead asked people to submit a ticket stating their situation. I personally wasn't around when ESEA was the go-to platform for CS, but I've always wondered why it just hardly exists anymore. Just an added thing on Faceit for a competitive league. And to be honest, this seems like a good enough reason. If you've watched the video up until this point, I want to thank you for sticking around. The research, script writing, asset gathering, and editing for this video took me weeks. If you enjoyed what you watched and you want to support the channel, I recommend that you hit the join button down below to become a YouTube member. All the names that are scrolling by are all Ride or Die YouTube members, and every person that joins gets me one step closer to making YouTube my full-time job, so thank you. Also, as a quick reminder, if you're looking to trade your skins, be sure to head over to SkinsMonkey and use my promo code Ride or Die. Anyway, that's it. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to leave a like, and if you want to stay up to date with my content, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell to be notified. Thanks for watching.